Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Learn the 5 Foundational Steps of Building the Perfect Operations Team with VP of MAPS Monica Reynolds and MAPS Coach Nicole Zuber. Please note this webinar is being recorded and you will automatically receive the webinar recording. If you have questions for your coaches, please type them into the questions box located in your webinar taskbar. Following the webinar, if you have any questions about today's call or coaching programs, please email us at fasttrack@kw.com. That's all for me, Monica and Nicole. Take it away.
Thank you so much. Hey, everyone, it's Monica Reynolds, and I so appreciate you taking the time. You know, this is my passion. It's Nicole's passion, and I dug the well, they can say. You know, I wrote books on team and how to hire your first assistant as a profit center. And those books were written in the 90s. And I know some of you are thinking, okay, I wasn't even quite born then, and I get that. So here's the good news. You're going to get a wealth of information from Nicole and I. And one of the things that I want to share is that I am passionate about leverage. I am passionate about what a great admin team can do. And so with that said, I'd like to introduce Nicole. And, you know, I'm VP of MAPS coaching and also run all the assistant program stuff. And I'd like to introduce Nicole Zuber, one of our executive head coaches. Nicole, say hello to everyone.
Thank you, Monica. Hello, everyone. My name is Nicole Zuber. I live out here in Austin, Texas, and I have the absolute privilege of coaching some of the top operations teams in the country or the world, can we say, Monica?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So it's a pleasure to be here. And like Monica said, I'm very passionate about this particular topic. I have been in your shoes. I've been in your Rainmaker shoes. Monica, you've coached me while I was in production as well. So,
and I've coached you to build out your team too. That was fun.
You sure did. Lots of experience.
Okay, good. All right, so let's get started here. So Stephanie, let's pull up the front page. So first of all, you guys, there's nothing like leverage in the world, but you have to understand your why. Why do you want an operations team? What's that about? Is it about creating balance in your life? Is it creating more production? Is it creating your life by design? Really get clear where you're going. You know, Gary's come out and said, and I agree too, one assistant's great. You don't need to build a massive team. And yet there's certain production when you get your reputation, things you're doing, Facebook ads, that business is coming at you pretty fast and heavy, and you see the opportunities to help people with the American dream, buy and sell real estate. So why do you want an operations team? And when do you want an operations team? So we're going to give you some steps to that. Now, there's some real bona fide steps that you can't do without making a mistake. And so we want to eliminate all that. So, you know, this is one of the models here. I believe this is 5A in the new, when you look at the 7 levels, this is 5A level. And one of the things that I want to share is that when you're building a team, you have an executive assistant. That's your base. That executive assistant moves into listing manager or operation or TC. And then that person, one of those people are the lead assistant underneath the Rainmaker. So remember, not both assistants report to the Rainmaker. One is in charge. And hopefully from the bench then, when your team starts to grow, the director of operations then is in charge of the listing manager and the TC. So what we want to make clear here is there's 3 people that we're talking about today. And so think about how your team grows. We're going to give you some guidelines. When an assistant has, you know, when you're closing more than 45, 50 transactions, it's time for that second assistant. So we're going to answer any of your questions in the question box too. So, all right, what else would you add, Miss Nicole Zuber, to this first page?
Well, I wrote down, I love what you said, Monica, who reports to who. Oftentimes we see 3 administrators or 2 administrators reporting to a Rainmaker, and that wasn't the intention of the model. So what I love about this program that we've worked so hard to rewrite to give you a new spin, everybody, is we're going to teach you and show you how to grow deep by enhancing your leadership skills, and we'll go into a lot of that in the future. So that's what I got.
And when Nicole, what you were just saying too is, remember, you always want to hire from the bench. So that executive assistant can end up being your director of operations. That executive assistant, which is fine, can end up being the listing manager or the TC. You know, the leadership skills, we can help develop those. And yet, let's go to the next page and show you what we're going to cover today pretty quickly in 25 minutes. The foundational steps, and we're not going to put 25 foundational steps in there. And Nicole could have added another 25. And yet we wanted to boil it down to just a few to give you something a little different to think about if you've been on any of my webinars before. Step 1 is culture. Step 2 is hiring, database, customer service, and 5th step is lead generation. These are the foundational things to be thinking about right now. So when I say, when do I start? What would you suggest on that, Nicole?
I'd suggest right now, Monica. Why do you think I said that?
Well, because this is who you are. Culture starts with who you are right now. So go to the next screen, Stephanie. So as a single agent with not a team right now, or you've got a team right now and you're listening to this, go back and let's talk about your culture. So, you know, when you look at the Y4C 2 T's, this is win-win or no deal. Do the right thing, always come, customers always come first, commitment in all things, communication, seek to first understand. Let me share something with you. If you're a director of operations listening to this call, one of the things that I really want you to hear is that when you have a belief system like this and you create the family, the team, people don't leave when you've got this incredible belief system. And yet we're going to teach the DO on the future calls on the perfect operations team, how to use this in a team meeting, how to come to a team meeting and say, okay, where did Y4C2T show up on our team? How did we have a customer who always came first, or win-win or no deal? You know, it doesn't have to be all of them, but a couple of them, and start to get the story of who you are. Speak a little bit about mission, vision, statement here, Nicole, and why that's important also.
Yeah, thank you, Monica. So mission it's a personal statement that describes your why you're alive, why is your team in existence. And you could collaborate with your rainmaker on coming up with a mission if you don't have one, and we'll teach you through that in this course. It is also the anchor. The mission is the anchor that pulls you back through. So if things come up, always go back to your mission. Go back to the MVVP and so on. So that's what I have on that, Monica.
Yeah, and so this happens to be one that I had on my team. And Stephanie, who's on the call, moving the screen for us, and thank you very much. You and I have worked together 11 years. We wrote these together with the team. So I took a big whiteboard, I put it up on an office meeting. Well, it was one of those poster boards, those great big ones, where the paper you can tear off and stick on the wall. And the mission and the vision we had established earlier as a team, we all agreed that that's who we are, to be recognized as a real estate team by which others are measured, to be the real estate team of choice. The values we would write down, each person would give 3 or 4 ideas. We get 40 or 50 different values, 40 or 50 different beliefs. And then we would categorize them and who voted for the top 10. And so this is who we are. We did it as a team. So that's a really good thing, because culture is critical to the growth of the team. The admin is the culture of the team. They are keepers of the culture. Okay, next page, Stephanie. So next we're going to talk about the hiring process. And we're going to go through 7 important questions. Nicole, take number 1, please.
Yeah, so number 1 is know your budget, and does it support another hire? Now, if you're going there and you're in a role right now where you don't have your hands on the budget, it's okay. This is a journey. And day 1, most people don't have their hands on the budget. We're going to teach you on how to work through that and how to maybe read the budget so that you can proactively go to your rainmaker and suggest, hey, we might be in need of a next hire. So,
exactly right. And then so we'll go through some of those systems and know your numbers. Do they support another hire? So, you know, the key thing, like in the MRA book, is you hire when you want to hire, and yet you're looking at the budget. And yet I'm going to give you some guidelines because everybody likes to know. So when you have 45 to 50 transactions, you're on target for that. A single agent, you should have at least 1 full-time assistant. You've now crossed the threshold, you're going to 75, you need at least a part-time. Anywhere from 50 to 100, you need 2 full-time assistants. 2 full-time assistants. You got to have business before you hire your buyer showing agent in following the models. And so that gives you the opportunity then to support the next hire, which is a buyer showing assistant or a buyer agent. So when you look at those kind of numbers, that gives you some of the guidelines. And then when people say to me, when do you hire a director of operations? And I said, anytime over that 120, 150 threshold, when you start to have that need and you start to have more projects or things that need to be done also, then that's when you start looking at that third hire, which could be the director of operations. I always say you have to have operations before you have a director of operations. Okay, so anything with that, Ms. Nicole?
No, you nailed it, Monica. One small thing I would add is going back to that director of operations role. If you're listening to this, I hope you hear there's opportunity to grow within. It's ideal to recruit from the bench, right? So we'll show you how to do that. And to Monica's point, you actually have to have an operation to have one to direct it before you can direct it. So that's what I got, Monica. Thank you.
Okay, so in hiring systems, you've got to have a detailed job description. Why is that important, Nicole?
Oh man. Well, if you don't know the need of the business and what the job role is to fill that need, then you're going to just hire anybody off the street or not have. That's a little extreme. And honestly, guys, like when you run a real estate team for 16 plus years, I might have made a lot of mistakes in that. So in the past. And so learning from how to find the need in the business, hire to that need, then you're taking a lot of the emotions out of it and you can go into accountability and standards.
Yeah, and I know you guys have heard this before. You're going to go to career visioning. And then if you look at number 4, have a 30, 60, 90-day plan. So a listing manager 30, 60, 90 is totally different than a TC 30, 60, 90. The EA 30, 60, 90 that is in PRIA is career visioning, also is one that I wrote, Perfect Real Estate Assistant. So when you're an EA, that 30, 60, 90 is totally different than a transaction manager, than a TC or a listing manager or a DO. Those are different 30, 60, 90s. You've got to have that organized in order to set these foundations as, and even when you're looking at your buyer agent, you're looking at an ISA, this is really important to have these things established and not hire someone and work on it. Not that I've ever done that, work on it as I do it. All right. So let's talk about compensation, Nicole.
Sure. So again, what we had mentioned earlier in the budget, when you get clear on the job role, how much the market is in your area can afford to or not to with that, then you're going off of more logical plan and you can see and measure, can I afford this? Can we not? What does the budget say? What does it not? What is the need of the business, etc. So compensation really guides you.
Yeah, and in your hiring systems, you might want to use a service, not that I get paid for this or anything, but talk to your market center to see if they have a service for payroll. It could be Paycheck. Thinking about the compensation plan, if they're licensed, pay them for referral fees. Establishing all of that. So again, when you're building a hub with 3 people, a listing manager, the TC, got a director of operations, all this has to have extreme clarity. And so it's very, very clear how that works. Make sure that your training program is in place. And so what that means is that, I'm a big proponent on making sure that people have great opportunities. Just think about when you go to family reunion mega camp, just thinking about this last year family reunion. Wasn't that awesome? It was just terrific. And so I want you to think about when you make the investment in your team to have training. And there's a lot of free training on KW Connect. There's so much that every time that there's a program like Family Reunion or Mega Camp, I say to the Rainmakers on the call, invest in them. And yet the training program too, you have to have that precise. When you're bringing on a new listing manager, who's in charge of that? When you bring on a new TC, who's in charge of that? So you've got to make sure you've got that in place. And when we write down time at the end there, time basically means that one of the things that's going to happen is that you're going to take the time to check in. You might be the rainmaker on the call. You might be the DO on the call today. You might be the TC training the new listing manager. Let's make sure that you've got a very precise day-to-day accountability for the first 30 days about getting someone up to speed, and not winging it through that process. They've made a commitment to be on your team. They're going to see your culture, and now they're going to excel in that job. Okay, Stephanie, the next slide, please, ma'am. So database system. So Nicole and I've talked about this a lot, and Gary talks about it. And so everybody's been talking about Zillow. You know how you fight Zillow? With the database. You know how you fight Zillow is you put a moat around your people, and that hub, that listing starts with the listing manager, the TC, the director of operations. Everybody circles in on that client. And so the database is absolutely your own asset. So what are the 4 laws of a database, Ms. Nicole?
So first law, guys, is, thank you, Monica, we're going to build the database. You got to start somewhere, right? So we're going to build it. Then we're going to show you how to feed it every day and how to communicate with it systematically through your systems. And then the service the lead anytime that it does come in. Bottom line, those are the 4 rules, but I hope you hear, like, we're going to help you with a strategic, systematic approach on how to do this.
Yeah, and so when you look at database, you're going to say, well, who owns that? So I want you to feel that in this call, I'm giving you some structures here. So the database is owned by everyone, and then there's one person, usually the director of operation, who monitors the growth, who monitors the completes, name, address, phone number, and email. Let's say a new listing comes in. It's the job of that listing manager, which we make it really clear in the training. We do 6 in-depth 1-hour calls on this particular, the listing manager. So I want you to hear also that when you look at this and you're thinking about this, the database, when that listing comes in, it's name, address, phone number, email, the completes, all that information is going in there. Getting the birthday, the month and the days, putting in the anniversary, excuse me, that's for the closing. So you're putting in the birth date, you're getting all that primary information. They have dogs, they have kids, you're getting all of that in there. That's the listing manager. And then the TC now is checking once let's say the listing sold, it goes to the TC. Now he or she is now checking all that information and now putting in the closing date. So an anniversary card can be sent on the anniversary of their house. Remember, we're now stepping it up. A lot of times I would never talk about a birthday card. I would never talk about, an anniversary date so much. But now it's part of making that relationship. When NAR says that 68% are not interested, when they poll clients that they have no relationship with the agent, they're not passionate about working with that agent again. We got a lot of work to do. And so when you have 3 key people like that, the focus, they're all on the database. The director of operations will control most of that. Okay, next page, Steph. So one of the next things is that, I always get the question, how do you get your team to think and act and care like you do? Well, go back to culture. Go back to hiring. That's part of it. Go back to letting them understand the value of the database. So Steph, let's look at the next slide here. So you want your team to think and care like you. All right. So first of all, you gotta hire the right people to think and act and care like you do. So what's number 1 mean, Nicole?
So getting the right people on board. Again, earlier I said, we're going to help you identify the need in the business. Then we create a job description, and that's what we hire to. When we're clear on that, then we can assess, are these the right people? And then you're not hiring to the person, you're hiring to a role that would be a good fit for the person, if I may.
Right, and make sure that they're all taking a KPA. Make sure that they read yours. And in that KPA, you've got 37 different job matches. So if you're hiring a TC, put a TC job match for that. You don't put an EA job match for that. Put a listing manager job match. Put, a director of operations job match. They're all there for you. So getting those right people on board to start with, and then setting the expectations, going back to the previous slide. So everything's, in sequence here. It's about the training. It's about the culture, win-win or no deal, integrity. One of the things that I've learned, and I've had offices like this, and we had to, call each other on it. You hang up a phone, sometime you go, oh God, that client's a nightmare. No, that, there's a lot of stress that clients will go through, especially in this real estate market. We can't say those disparaging things. That's the culture that you want to have in your office. That people are positive and they were not making fun of anyone or any client that is driving us crazy sometimes, but we all have those. So we want to come from compassion and understanding, setting expectations of what the job looks like with the job description, but also setting expectations where, this is the hours, this is what we expect, this is the quality of work we're looking for, this is your schedule, this is the time you arrive. Setting all those expectations, really, really important. And who does that? When you're hiring, you've got a hub, the director of operations is going to be doing those things. So we've got that very defined in 6 calls on a director of operations. What's the next one? Share motivation. What does that mean, Stefan or Nicole?
It's okay. Thanks, Monica. So sharing motivation, like what gets them out of, what gets you and what gets them out of bed every day. So keeping that momentum and the energy going is going to inspire your team to show up when they should. And because they have expectations and we know when we're going to win and when we win and when we lose, another part of the expectation piece, it's going to be able to be so much easier to keep that momentum going. Monica, did I miss anything?
Motivation also goes back to the culture of win-win or no deal, customer is always right. Please understand that this is one of the most fabulous careers in the world. We're helping people with the American dream. And so there's just certain systems, certain customer service experiences, big bad Zillows out there, and they're coming for our clients. So we want to protect them in these ways. So involve the team in the MVVBP. We talked about that, how important it is. I did that once a year, that we looked at our values and our beliefs and our perspectives. Pretty much our mission and vision never really altered. And yet it's a powerful thing to do as a team. Whether you have one assistant and one agent, you still want to do that because you're building that foundational culture. All right, number 5, Miss Nicole.
So having a strategic game plan to create your team buy-in. How about a GPS, for example? That's how I'm reading that. So you wouldn't drive from New York to LA without a map, right?
Right.
So why would you go an entire year without some sort of guidance? And the cool thing is creating the buy-in piece. Why not build your GPS with your team? Then everybody's involved. Nobody succeeds alone, guys.
That's right. And so the next one with the 411s. So some of you are saying, what? An assistant has a 411? Absolutely. A listing manager, a TC, a director of operations, they have a 411. They're part of the goals. They're part of the dream of what the whole, mission and values and beliefs of the team are. So this is where you really can have people be accountable. And so with that too, when you look at quarterly team events, what does that do, Miss Nicole?
Oh man, Monica, what doesn't it do? It continues to build the culture, build camaraderie and teamwork around this. It ties into all of the other things that we've been talking about. Keeping everybody on the same page, keeping them motivated. Like let's be real, guys. Is it easy out there right now? I mean, is it fun presenting 70 offers to your sellers or putting a property on the market and then having people knock on the door? There's all sorts of things happening in today's market. And when you can keep your team together and gelled, it makes everything else so much easier.
So when you look at these points, and for time, I'm going to move on here pretty quickly now. When you look at these points, when you hire the right people, there's nothing like the synergy, the camaraderie, the culture, the feeling, and the teamwork. When you look at all of these things about mutual respect and helping your admin to build wealth, helping an admin, which I've done many times, get out of college school debt and putting a plan together. All that's so powerful. 5-star communication, all of those things are critical, that they understand that the customer comes first, the customer is always right. Next page, Stephanie. So for lack of time here, I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. So 5 lead generation, the 5th foundational piece is lead generation models. So I am working very hard to change my lingo from past clients into customer for life. Past client means you died. So I want to make sure that customer for life is you had this customer and it's now your customer for life. And then you've got to determine the 5 sources of business and they track the ROI. How is an admin involved in this? Admin's involved in all the customer for life pieces, all the scripts, the letters, asking for reviews, referrals, the 5 sources of business. The director of operations would be more responsible for that and tracking the ROI, return of investment, on each one of those. And of course, there's the great Gary thing from MREA, leads, listing, and leverage. And so it's all about that. And yet the director of operations has a massively big job because they oversee all of this. So let's go to the next slide and let's talk about this, Nicole. And on this next slide, I want to show you the roles of operations team and what the roles begin to look like. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. This is just a very short list. There's other things you can add. If you have questions, start to put them in the chat box. When you divide up a team, the listing manager, and I'll have you do the TC one, Nicole. The listing manager activates the listing, does the marketing on the listings, price improvements, only if they're licensed, seller updates, compliance paperwork, agent updates, reviews, and referrals. Now there's other components to this, of course, and the key thing here is that this is the initial, this is the very first beginning of the journey to the transaction coordinator. So all of those things can be done by one person. Some teams have a separate marketing assistant with social media and all the different things that they're doing, which is great. Some agents will do the price improvements themselves. I've always learned on a licensed listing manager, they're much better at price improvements than I am. I'll get involved in the story or I'll feel like, oh, well, we better not do that today. Or the listing manager, they'll just go for it. So of course that's role play and scripts and everything. Tell us about a transaction manager, dividing that role up.
Yeah, so our transaction managers tracking deadlines, coordinating the process, compliance, and paperwork. That role is dotting our I's and crossing our T's, which is needed when people are running 400 miles an hour, right? So they're also updating the buyers and sellers, agent updates, negotiating repairs, writing offers, and of course, the reviews and the referrals, which will show you how that works so that you can track whether you're winning or losing.
Yeah, and so remember, some of you might be saying, well, my assistant, I have one that's transaction to close. So when you're hiring, I want you to hear this, just from my experience of 40 years of doing this, that the personality style of a listing manager is more of, has an S, they have C, they have I. So my favorite listing manager is an SCI. Why? They're nice, they're detailed, they've got some energy. That's my favorite profile if you hear me talking about the DISC. On the transaction manager, that's a different personality style. And when you do the KPA, it's also going to tell you if it's a match. And to me, that's a high C. At least in my world, I need someone that's got a very high C to cross the T's, dot the I's, clean up anything that I may have missed, which I could miss on it being a double D, right? And then now looking at the director of operations, what's the perfect profile there? You know, a DC is great, a CD is great. Need to have a little bit of D in there that's kind of working or developing, because when you have that D, you're able to do the onboarding, do the offboarding, have the accountability, not be shy about the accountability, oversee the P&L and the systems, got to have that C for that, oversee the admin team, backup. So here's the thing that people don't understand. And I know people have made a mistake in hiring a director of operations who knew nothing about transaction management, knew nothing about lead listing management. They weren't a backup. And so they've got to learn those systems. They can come from outside the industry and be a director of operations, yet they need to learn those systems, because you can't lead until you understand, you know, what our soldiers are doing. So that's the way I like to look at it. So when you look at this, it's a very complicated process. When you hire your EA and then you break your EA off into a listing manager, and you hire another assistant to a TC. One of those people will come off the bench, hopefully, to rise to a director of operation, then hire, let's say it was a TC, then that TC then that director of operations now is training the TC because they just left the job. So do you see why coming off the bench is always a great thing? So we have, go to the next slide. We have a 6-month course, all brand new material that Nicole and I have worked. Nicole is in the trenches with all the top director of operations. She coaches all of them across the country. So we pulled our resources together. There are 18 calls, they're live Zoom calls. We do 6 in-depth calls on a listing manager, from the perfect profile to the job description to nailing down the 30, 60, 90, to all the different duties that are with a listing manager. So when you're onboarding a listing manager, you'll have an onboarding listing manager file, manual workbook that you can go through with them. One of the things also on call 6 is we have we have listing managers from different parts of the country that will be talking to us, 2 or 3 on the call on that 6th call on listing managers. The next 6 calls is on transaction coordinators. Love you. Transaction coordinators, you're probably tearing your hair out right now. Love you. One of the listing managers are having a tough time too. It's just the market, right? And so we've got the perfect profile for that person. And we have the 30, 60, 90, the detailed job description, all the activities all narrowed out, how they can do that. And then of course the director of and then on the 6th call of the TC, then we have interviews with some of the top TCs in the country. And of course the last call is the director of operations. And this is a critical call because this is where your hub is. People will stay with you when you hire buyer agents, listing agents, if you're expanding, if you're going to grow your team, because of the support. The hub is the heart of the team. It's the heartbeat. You can't make a mistake when it comes to the hub. Your systems have to be great. The scripts have to be great. The communication has to be great. That's how you keep great agents. They never want to leave because of the hub. They never want to leave because of the culture, because it's all, you guys do the right thing all the time. So then on the 6th call of the director of operations, we're taking the mystery out of what does a director of operations do? What does their schedule look like, or his schedule? What do they do? So everybody's got a schedule. We put that together, the 30, 60, 90. But more importantly, we've uncovered every single thing that a director of operations should and could be doing. And Nicole has valuable input because she coaches some of the best in the country. The last call, Nicole will be interviewing, 3 DOs from around the country and what they do, their successes, where they stumbled, mistakes they've made, how they've recovered. Not that any of us have ever made mistakes, right? So Nicole, did I miss anything there? Oh, this call is for everyone on the team. So you put your agent on the call, your rainmaker. The calls are recorded if they miss, because we know how busy they are, right? So if you've got your admin team, no matter how many, put them on the call. And what I think too, and Nicole brought this up the other day, it's good for a buyer agent to hear what you guys do. It's good for a listing agent to hear what you guys do. So let's just all come to the call and learn. Because then you go off the call and say, yeah, we need to do that. Or yeah, let's do that, but let's also add this. So that's what's great about that. All right, Nicole, what did I miss on this? And we'll start looking at some of these questions.
You covered so much there. Thank you for that insight, Monica. Nailed it. So what's next? Do we have questions?
Steph, do we have questions? Ahas, what'd you learn today? I can't see the questions in the box.
Yeah, so
Are you there, Steph? She must be muted though. I'm happy to cover questions.
Okay, thank you, Angel. Take over, please.
So first question mentioned some sample job descriptions and 30, 60, 90s available through KW. Do you know where those might be available?
I have nothing to do with those. They might be on KW Connect. We definitely have them in Perfect Real Estate Assistant. If you email me at monica@kw.com, tell me which one you want. I'll be happy to send those. So in this course, which starts next month, we go into detail. So there's an EA job description that's different than a listing manager, that's different than a TC, that's different than a director of operations, and that's different than a buyer agent. And so I've got all those, and I've got all the 30, 60, 90. What I don't want to do is just send it all to you, because then none of it makes sense. So ask me one or two that you want. I'm happy to give those to you, but I also, really request, please consider making the investment. You're going to leave there with all that information. And so people have asked me, what's the difference between perfect real estate assistant and the perfect operations team? It's really important to go to the perfect real estate assistant, which starts, I believe, next week. And that's the foundational piece. That's all the systems. That's all the job descriptions also. For an EA, for a buyer agent, etc. It's all of the foundational pieces on a listing and a closing. And it's about, when you hire your first assistant, all the things to put into place. If you're building your team, this is for you, because we go in depth into each one of these jobs. So monica@kw.com. Okay, what's next?
Next question. Sorry to ask, and yet what is a KPA? How do you get access to it?
Oh, golly, great answer. Okay, great. Keller Personality Assessment. So when you get off this call, you call your market center, you call your TL, and you say, I want to take a KPA. Every market center has them available. You should have one, and you put your category, if you're an agent here, that you're a mega agent, and then you're going to see the job fit. And it's a great thing. It's really, really important that you take one, and that anyone you hire takes one, so you can see the job fit. It's what Gary Keller has put together, their team called Keller Personality Assessment. You can't win or lose. It's all the analytics that they bought from other companies and put together that show if you have the traits to do that job. It's great. It's awesome. So make sure you take one today. Okay, it only takes about 30, 40 minutes. It's very enlightening, very enlightening. Okay, what's next?
That's all the questions we have.
Okay, all right, everyone. So I hope you hear this. When you build a hub, you're expanding your business. Know your why. Know why you're building a hub. And whether it's expansion, whether it's I want to do, 150 plus transactions, I want to recruit agents to my team, I want to successfully build a 7th level team. It's all about the hub. The hub is the most important piece of building this out. So if you're interested, go sign up. If you use the code today, you'll get $100 off the first call. And so I'm excited to have you on the call. Nicole, did I miss anything before we let everybody go?
Yes, one last comment. Thank you, Monica. Is you guys, no matter where you are in this business, Monica showed you the first step is probably taking the perfect real estate assistant to get those foundational pieces. As you're growing into the next level of growth, whether you already have the team established or you're really wanting to figure out the dials into the next hub, this is the place for you. And so we've worked diligently, haven't we, Monica, with our busy schedules, rewriting this content so that Monica and I, we get on a soapbox because we have been the unsung hero for in the past. That's not happening anymore. So we're committed to helping you guys shine, step into the light that you're intended to shine in. So we look forward to working with you over the next 6 months.
Yeah, and I saw some of the comments. Thank you for, explaining the models, and some of you signed up. I appreciate that. Here's the deal. Zillow is a monster out there. And if I was back in real estate, and I've been out since I've, a few years here since I'm the VP of Maps, one of the things that I would be doing is I would even hire that extra person to start building that customer experience, maybe a concierge service, maybe calling, where you're going to find listings is in your database right now also. So, I coach a few top producers right now. It's all about the database and shoring that up. And so this class would really help you with that. I am so excited about what you can do, what you can achieve, and I hope that you guys sign up for this class. Love to see you on that. Thank you so much for joining our class today. Appreciate you, Nicole. Thanks, Angel. Thanks, Stephanie. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.